Yeah, my name is Mike Garcica. That is my website, noconference.com. I'm not a professional speaker, obviously. I don't present much. I don't do too many presentations. Kind of like what Charles said. I'm out there working with other private investors, acquiring notes, and so if I seem a little rough, sorry. Yeah, I started buying rental properties back in 1999, just using straight bank financing, two-family houses, nothing fancy. I thought that was my path to freedom, financial freedom. And then I discovered the note business in 2007, and I'll be getting to you shortly on that. By the end of this presentation, Charles asked me to give you like so much content that he said he wants your head to explode or something. So I figured I would give you 3 things that I do that'll really probably, hopefully, at least change your mindset or get you on the right path to doing some things. The first thing I want to do is I definitely want to give you an overview of what I do in the note business. I love it. I'm passionate about it. The second thing I want to do is give you a tool that I've been using. I kind of discovered it about 3 years ago. It's no secret. It's no big deal, but it is a real big deal if you apply it correctly. So I'm going to get into that, and that's something you can use. You don't have to be in the note business. You can be doing any type of investing, and then kind of tie it all together with where I'm heading for my retirement, and kind of pulling the whole thing together and trying to get to financial freedom. It's pretty much been my goal since I realized real estate investing back in 1999. I need to do something other than just working at my job. So that's what I do with that's what I want to cover today. So what really did change my life with this note investing business? I was just telling a gentleman in the hallway how I discovered this business. I was going to real estate events, as many as I could. I was going weekly. I was driving. I wanted to see what other products were out there besides just buying rental properties. I thought rental properties was the way to do it, and I knew that there had to be something more. So I started gathering a few friends at these events and just talking to people, figuring out what they're doing, how they're making money, what's so special about this event, this presenter, you get these guys that, run to the back of the room and, this time now, and, all that stuff. I guess you've been to one or two of those. Bags and bags of books, everybody walking around with a bunch of books and stuff. And, I went to a lot of these things. I was really sick of working. I was sick of it. So like I said, I had 5 or 6 friends that I was talking about investing with. And I belonged to online, like creative real estate online things. I was getting tons of emails, all these different possible products and avenues that I could have taken. And I'd sit there, have a glass of wine, read all my emails. I'll send this one off to Eduardo because he was doing, this is back in the day, pre-construction Florida. It was a great idea, right? So I would get a pre-construction email from somebody, and I would ship that off to Eduardo. And my buddy Tony Costa was telling me about note investing. He was like, man, there's something to this. I'm like, and him and I both owned real estate together. Not together personally, but we would talk about our fantastic tenants that we had. And share some of those stories that we had. It was great. And so this note email came inviting us to a free webinars every other Wednesday night, free conference calls or whatever it was. So I shipped that email off to him, and he calls me up about a month or 2 later, and he's like, so what do you think of these webinars? What do you? I go, what webinars? He goes, that email you sent me. I'm like, I was drinking that night. Beers, I'm firing emails off him. So he's like, you got to get on this call. So I did. It was a guy on Wall Street who had cracked the code back in, I think, 2002. He was buying non-performing second mortgages. Yeah, that sounds really safe and secure. You know, I don't even know if, you know, I really didn't understand the business, obviously. But he had a good way of explaining it, and he had a great way of explaining it because several of the people that were on that webinar are still in business. They've started hedge funds together. We're all still in the business. We live it. We talk about it. We're all friends, most of us. And there's you know, PPR, those guys over in Philadelphia, Partners for Payment Relief. Those guys were on the calls. They were newbies. We were all newbies. I think they got 25 people working for them now, working on these notes. So it was a game changer for me. So kind of in a nutshell, once I got onto these webinars, I learned how to learn the business. I learned the business by just having a lot of friends, and I started holding my own webinars on information that I gathered. Let's say I found a new software package. I would hold a webinar and say, hey, listen, I'm using time value 5 to sort out my amortization schedules. Well, let's have a webinar. So I would have 10 or 5 or 10 guys get on this webinar with me, and I would show them how I load my notes in. But that's beside the point. What I did was I surrounded myself with a bunch of pretty, you know, smart people, and they carried me through. So that was it. So, what is a note? What exact business am I doing? Right now, we buy mainly non-performing residential notes. I'm starting to get into the commercial space right now. But, so what's a non-performing note and what do I do with it? I get these notes delivered to me from hedge funds, servicing companies. They know that I'm out there brokering notes. They know that I'm out there partnering with other people. They send me these discounted notes. And they don't really know that what discount they can sell them to me at until I sit down and do the due diligence. So let's say there's a property in, I don't know, a town over here in Maryland. I'm looking at a couple of notes right now. In Maryland, non-performing residential mortgages that a hedge fund purchased about 2 years ago, and they're actually liquidating their whole fund right now, and they're going to do a rebuy in the next quarter. They need to liquidate, clean out all their notes, and buy new notes. And for tax reasons, they ended up moving to Puerto Rico and trying to do some tax stuff there. So I'm looking at these notes right now. They're all non-performing, which means that the borrower is not making monthly payments. They've stopped making payments, some of them a year ago, some of them 5 years ago, on their second mortgage. So they've got a first mortgage, and they're paying that every month, but for some reason they got in their head that, you know what, I'm not going to pay my second mortgage. And you know, and for various reasons. Some of them, as we dig deeper, we'll see, hey, you know, they've got a ton of student debt, and they said, well, as long as we pay our first mortgage, maybe we'll get to stay in our house, and we can use that $400 a month and pay off the student debt. You know, we've gone through some hard times. There's no doubt about it. But the banks that sold these mortgages to this hedge fund that I'm buying them from right now, they sell those notes to hedge funds for various reasons. They sell them, they are able to write down the amount, $50,000 mortgage. It's gone into the non-accrual or the no payment bucket after 90 days. And they start taking that $50,000 value and they mark it down to $45,000 in their tax record purpose mind. Until they write it down to maybe $5,000 or $6,000, then they present them out to the secondary market, which is what I'm in, and we get a chance to look at these things and buy them for 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. So the borrower owes $50,000. I'm buying a note for 10 cents on the dollar. I'm buying it for 5,000 bucks. So how much does the borrower owe me?
$50,000.
$50,000. I'm like, I'm in it. I'm in this business, man. This is crazy. Because do I go after the full 50,000? Not always. I give them a discount. I give them a serious discount sometimes because their house just isn't worth it. They've fallen behind because they couldn't afford the original $600 monthly payment, but they can afford $150 or $200. And we know that. We take these notes, we send them over to it's called a servicing company. It's like a collection company. And they get in touch with the homeowner. They say, hey, listen, what happened? You know, and a lot of things happened. The economy changed. In 2008, this country went through some serious stuff. And the banks can't call up these people and say, you know what, just give me $200. The banks just can't do that. I don't even know if they would. They would rather sell it to me and people like me and let us do these type of workouts. Because, you know, let's face it, if Wells Fargo started giving away, hey, you know what, just give me $200, don't worry about the $600 thing. You know, if word got out that happened, I think we'd all be like, all right, you know. But they don't want to foreclose either. They don't want to throw people out of their house for not paying their second mortgage. We were buying a lot of Wells Fargo paper for a while. That stopped in 2012. But Wells Fargo was a major supplier of our product that we were buying nationwide. So that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. You know, some of the hard parts to this business is doing the upfront due diligence. I've seen people go into this business with $1 million and come out with $100,000. You know? I've seen people go into this business with $1 million and they turn it into $20 million because they're doing things right. They're hiring the right people. They're going through the right processes. They're taking their time with the due diligence. They're not paying just crazy prices. You know, so, like this trade I'm going through right now. The seller wants $132,000. I went back at $110,000. Now, I mean, you know, what Charles was talking about, $1.5 million, $1.6 million worth of debt. We don't plan on recovering that 1.6. We might recover $500,000 or $600,000 out of that debt. But I'm still careful with this, you know, negotiation. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I want 130. I'm getting $2 million worth of product or $1.5 million. I'm still tiptoeing into this thing, saying, listen, he came back. We went in at, I forget the original offer, but he came back and he wanted 132. So I just went back today at 110,000 because I want to meet in the middle at 116 or 115. You know, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. And if you keep that mentality, and whatever real estate transaction you're doing, when you start talking about big money, oh yeah, well, you know, the house is going to be worth 300 when it's fixed up, and you're buying it for 160, you still got to pay attention to. You don't want to get in over your head. You don't want to go, oh yeah, well, you know, I've got a $120,000 spread. Let's go out and put a granite instead of just putting Formica. You know, whatever your rehabs are. So I'm still careful. I apply the same principles that I did 6 years ago or 7 years ago when I started out in this business of doing far beyond the regular amount of due diligence necessary to make sure that I don't lose money. And so that's worked a lot in my favor. So I'm trying to think what was kind of the key things that really attracted me to this business. Probably when I was out collecting my rentals, I thought that, hey, you know, that guy owes me $1,600 a month, and this guy owes me, I got a two-family over here, that's $3,000 a month. I like the idea of people owing me money every month. You know? But but I was buying properties at 100 cents on a dollar. So the $3,000 a month was going pretty much to all my debt service and maintenance. So I like my rentals. My kids are going to like my rentals better than me, because by the time I'm gone, they're going to be happy. They'll probably sell them all and say, I'm not doing what Dad did.
Put them in trust.
You know, answering the phone, crazy hours. But I believe in both. I believe in owning some long-term real estate, absolutely. You know, it is what it is. I think most of you know. And I believe in owning some short-term performing mortgages, where you buy a mortgage. You can even go out and buy a mortgage that's already performing. I sell performing mortgages. Once I get them going and start making that monthly payment, well, these things are worth money now. You know, you're getting $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year. I usually, okay, so the way I buy a performing note for myself, you guys can work up your own numbers. I take 3 years worth of monthly payments. So let's say where I'm getting $250 a month, that comes out to $3,000 a year. I would buy that mortgage for 3 years of monthly payments, or I'd pay $9 grand for it. I want all of my money back in 3 years. That's a sweet deal, right? I don't know, it comes out to 33% return. That's the offers that I make on performing mortgages. I'm getting 33% return, and I don't have to do any work. The only thing I have to worry about is if the borrower stops making payments. But that's why I hire a collection company to handle these issues for me, to make sure that that doesn't happen, or if it does happen, they need to start getting moving and making phone calls, get that borrower to start making payments again. So kind of my financial plan is to have a bunch of these things paying me and collect the money. That's pretty much it. That's my fabulous business plan, is to acquire as many performing mortgages as I can acquire. Whether I acquire them by buying them off of other hedge funds that have done the exact same process that I did, where they took a non-performer and they flipped it over and converted it into a performing note, I'll buy that. I'll get into some of the really interesting techniques that I've discovered in the next couple of slides. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what the note business is, how it works, what you can do with it. There is a ton of different exit strategies that you can use when working with a borrower. One of them may be, well, picture it now. When I buy a mortgage, I become the bank. I am taking over and assuming the same responsibility that the bank had, which is collecting payments. So, and really, you know, so you have to treat it as a professional thing, you know. You can't go out there gunslinging with a baseball bat, you know, trying to collect your mortgages. I've thought about it a few times, but I haven't actually done it. Some borrowers, by the time we get done working with them, they think that we're the greatest. I've reduced their monthly payment. I mean, that's sweet. I've lowered their interest rate. So they were paying, and these second mortgages, sometimes they're 14 to 15%, depends on when they were originated. I dropped them down to 4.25% all the time, which lowers their monthly payment. They owe $60,000 on the mortgage. I say, listen, you pay me for 24 months consistent, don't mess up, I don't want to hear from you, just make the payments. I'll take 20 grand off the top of your principal. So they owe me 60. After 24 months, we sign a document and say, your mortgage is now worth 40. But if you mess up, it goes back to 60. They're like, that's crazy, I've never heard of that before. I actually have a guy in Maryland, in Baltimore, who he writes up my forbearance agreements, which is the document stating the temporary forbearance agreement, the temporary changes that we're making. We're not allowed to actually rewrite the mortgage. We're not mortgage originators. But we can do what's called a temporary forbearance agreement through my legal servicing company. And we can draw up those documents that way. So that's my goal, is to acquire as many of these performers as I can.
Now you call it a temporary forbearance agreement, so.
Yeah, it's a temporary forbearance agreement. It's either temporary for the life of the loan or until something happens. And what happens when people take out mortgages and stuff? Yeah, I'll take questions in a little bit, guys.
Okay,
So, you know, there's certain legal aspects to this business that I let my servicing company handle all that. My partner, Kevin Cordell, owns a servicing company out of New Jersey. He's one of the original guys that were on the webinars together. He's very successful in this business as well. He handles all of my legal stuff. What I do is I manage my servicing company. That's the hardest part of this business, is management. You know, I manage my notes by looking at what I have, how many more do I need, where can I get more? That's my job. Doing the due diligence, making sure that I'm not buying junk and not getting ripped off. That's my job as well. I also manage my servicing company. I make sure that they're calling the borrowers when they're supposed to call. I make sure that they're asking for the correct payments that I instruct them to do. And it is a job. You know, this is not a get-rich-quick thing by any means. It's a get-rich slowly, and it's a get financially free slowly scheme. I also have attorney management. I have to manage the attorneys that are starting my different legal processes, which is sometimes if I have a borrower that won't talk to me, won't call me, won't answer the phone, I start foreclosure. And I have the right to start foreclosure whether it's in first, second, or third position if the borrower is not paying me. So I turn legal on after a certain point where the borrower is not paying me. I crank that faucet on, and then all of a sudden my phone rings. Hey, foreclose on me. And my house is getting sold next month at an auction. What's going on? Well, let's talk. You know, but I'm not going to be as nice a guy as I would have been 6 months ago when you would have answered your phone. So, you know, it's an interesting, it's a game of chicken really, because I don't want the guy's house. I'm not going to foreclose from second position, but he doesn't know that. I'm foreclosing. It looks like I'm foreclosing. I got a lawyer and I'm foreclosing. I have the right to. Don't tell anybody. I have foreclosed on a couple of houses and it didn't end well. It didn't end well for anybody. I told the borrower, this isn't going to end well. This is not going to end well. So, you know, these are the things you learn as you're progressing through the business. But yeah, you do have the right to foreclose on these properties. It's not by any means anything that I want to do. I'm not after properties. I have enough of those headaches. There are people that go out and buy first mortgages, and their sole intention is to acquire properties, and they can do that, and they do that all the time. They will actually look through these lists of notes and find the ones that they think are vacant. And they're like, hey, let's go after that one in Cleveland. I'm really looking for a 100-year-old 3-story house that's vacant in Cleveland. It's gutted, it's toast, but these guys, that's their business. If they can acquire that note for $5 grand and take the property over and fix it up and flip it around and turn it into 70, that's their game. No, it's not what I look forward to doing. I don't want to work with contractors anymore. I'm done with that. If you guys have any experience working with contractors. So, yes, that's another form of the business too. I consider what I do strictly going after the cash flow, going after the positive cash flow. I buy a note for $5 grand, I turn it into $250 a month, I get my money back. And now this borrower is going to pay me for another 25 years. Move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. I buy these things within my self-directed IRA. I keep my IRA cash poor. I let the payments stack up, I go out and buy more notes. Now I'm broke again. I let the money stack up, I go out and buy more notes. I keep this process going. By the time I turn 55, 56. I should have enough notes to get this nice cash flow that I'm looking for. I can do this business from anywhere. I was sitting in the lobby before, making connections with the seller on my next tape that I'm buying. I don't need to be anywhere. You know, with the cash flow, I don't even need to be alive. My monthly payments come in. I don't talk to my borrowers on the performing notes. I don't have to go there and tell them, you gotta get those garbage cans out of the street, and you just can't leave those things out there all week like that. You don't call the bank. You don't call the bank when your roof is leaking or when your toilet's exploding. So that's kind of the no business, the way I see it, the way I've been doing it for 7 or 8 years now. 2007 is when I got turned on to this. 2009 is when I started growing my own network. I've got 550 people now that are serious. Well, some of them are serious. Maybe 250 of them are serious note buyers. They sign up through my website. I have free webinars, whenever I can get a chance to do it. So I built my network back in 2009 because I didn't want to physically travel to any more of these RIA meetings. I did everything online. I used go to webinar, go to meeting, and then I moved up into go to webinar because I had too many people in there. And I would just hold these webinars whenever I found some good information, or when I found a guest speaker that wanted to come on and talk about whatever they want to talk about, as long as it was note related. So that's how I started getting into this. When I was having these webinars, I wasn't even trying, but I became kind of the guy in front of the room. So people started bringing me not only their questions and their software, but they started bringing me notes. And the hardest part about this business is finding the notes and doing the due diligence. That if you don't know how, if you can find the notes all day long but you don't know what you're buying, you're going to be in big trouble. So find somebody who knows what they're talking about when you think about jumping into this space. So I kind of did that by accident as well, having people bring me notes and say, hey, you know, I started brokering notes. When I broker a package of notes out, I try to get between $1,000 and $2,000 per note. I used to get 2 cents. So 2 cents. If I'm buying a $100,000 mortgage and I'm buying it for 10 cents, I would mark it up to 12 cents and then keep the difference, which was $2 grand. But then I started dealing with these $20,000 and $30,000 notes, and I'm like, 2 cents, it just doesn't work. It's 400 bucks. So I started making it $2 grand, or at least $1,000 per folder, per note. So someone would bring me 50 notes. I would show them out to my guys. Let's say they took down 15 of them. I would sit there and help them do the due diligence on the 50, drill it down to 15 that they liked, work up an offer price, and they came up with 10 cents across the board. I would submit it to these people minus $2,000 for each note. So like on this trade over here, I'm not going to do it with this trade because these are my students. But if this was just an outsider that wasn't part of my program, they offered 116, they offered, let's say, $110,000. We're buying 45 notes. I would submit the offer at maybe 75 or 80 grand, and I would keep the change. So, you know, maybe 25 or 30,000 bucks in one transaction that took me 2 weeks. But let me tell you what, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of due diligence. It's a lot of back chasing. Once we wire the funds, now we wait for what's called the collateral package, the collateral files. These are sometimes they're this thick. They'll give you the mortgage application and all this stuff, and sometimes you open them up and like a moth flies out and there's one piece of paper in there. It's like, what am I supposed to do with that? That's not, it's not the whole package. Now I have to go back and say, hey, listen, you shorted us the different documents that are required that I need to prove that I actually have ownership of this note. In the likelihood that I need to foreclose, there's certain documents that I need to have. And so now my job is chasing back and forth, making sure that the seller is going to provide me with these collateral files within a timely fashion, or we want our money back. So being a broker stuck in the middle has its challenges, but the challenges, you know, get outweighed by, first of all, I like facilitating these deals. I like being in the middle. It's wholesaling notes. It's wholesaling notes instead of houses. Finding the notes, negotiating the notes, making sure that the notes get delivered. I don't know how much wholesalers get involved with all that stuff, but I do with my buyers. So getting into the brokering a little bit more now. When I broker, I became a note investor first. I fell in love with the idea of all these people throughout the country only 50 grand each. Then I realized that, hey, there's not enough money for me to just keep buying these things without doing something else. So I started helping my friends buy notes. I helped them do the due diligence. I would actually hold webinars. I hold webinars like every day now, just with my private investors. Doing the due diligence all together. We sit there and mostly laugh, but we have a pretty good time. But, you know, my wife leaves me alone because, hey, he's working. But we're goofing around a little bit, webinars. But it gets me, you know, it gets me some free time to hang out with some really cool people. That's kind of what's cool about the note business as well. You get to pick and choose who you want to hang out with, who you want to work with, and who is really going to, you know, make a difference in this business. So that's kind of it. I'd like to open it up to questions just related to notes, and then I want to go on to my presentation. So, you know, if I can take questions just on the note business right now, I'd be happy to. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how do you find these notes? Why do these folks contact you as opposed to?
Yeah. The question is, how do you find these notes, and why do they, you know, how do you get these things? I have a whiteboard at home, and you wouldn't believe how many hedge funds are out there doing this business. Every time I hear about a fund, I write it down on the whiteboard. I've got a pretty big whiteboard. It's just loaded with names of these funds. I'm like, I never heard of these guys. There was an outfit out in Long Island called Keyhole Financial. I've been in this business 8 years. I thought I knew everybody that was buying non-performing seconds, because it's a very small, niche world, you know. Here's this outfit that was out there for almost 20 years doing exactly our business. Called them up. Hey, I'm Mike Rosica, you know, how come I never met you? Like, how come I never heard of you before? He goes, oh, we just do our own thing, you know. We started a fund. I go to their website. They've got 6 pages of 6 different funds that they borrowed people's money. They bought a bunch of assets. They have 5 years before that fund closes, and then they show the results, and then at 4.5 years, they liquidate. I'm like, oh yeah, man, this is too easy. So I look at our website, there it is. There's a fund. They got a 232% return for the last 4.5 years. I said, hey Mark, it looks like you have a fund that's winding down. Yeah, we got like 20 assets in there. What are you doing with it? He goes, we have to liquidate them. I'm like, oh man, it sucks, you know, shoot them over. So I took a look at these things. They were beautiful. I bought them all. That was some of the best paper I ever bought, because that company had already reached their goal of making over 100% return. They had a 232% return on that pool of notes. They were done. They're like, okay, let's start a new fund. Oh, well, what about these 20? You'll sell them to Rosica, you know. And I bought these things for a great price. I had all this beautiful website information in front of me that these guys were done. They started another page with you know, Keyhole 6. And this fund is winding down, and they're more focused on new investors for Keyhole 6 than they were for Keyhole 5 or Keyhole 3, whichever one this was. So these things it's all about networking and networking with the right people. Yes, sir.
With the economy improving, do you think this pool will dry up, and that, you know, such opportunities will get lesser and lesser.
Yeah, the question is, as the economy improves, will this business kind of dry up and the product dry up? I don't know how much this economy is really improving. And I mean that seriously. I think that we're seeing kind of a little like a, you know, I think we're in for some more. I think we're in for, and it's not wishful thinking. It's not like I sit here and pray for snow. Done. And my neighbor across the street, he's the one who's been praying for snow. But I'm not praying for another meltdown. But I see what's going on with the, especially in the second mortgage industry. The seconds that were written back in 2004 and 2005 were a 30-year mortgage with a 10-year borrowing window and a 20-year payback. So for the first 10 years of that mortgage, starting in 2004, 2005, they only had to pay interest only. And now that it's 2015 and 2014, 2015, their mortgage is going to ratchet up now to amortize 30 years worth of payments in 20-year window. Because they only got 20 years left, because the paper's going to be mature in 2004 to 24, 2025. So we've only got 20 years now to pay off a 30-year mortgage. That payment's going to go from $250 a month up to $900. I don't know where that money's going to come from. The due diligence that we do is we look at credit reports. We just got done. I just pulled 134 credit reports on this last purchase that we're doing. I have seen so much student debt on burying these people. I see medical. I see student debt. I don't know. I really don't think that we're in for this thing drying up very quickly. But you know, it remains to be seen. What I'm planning on doing now is starting to move into the commercial space. There's a ton of commercial paper out there. I think that the way this business is, it's really more of a way of life. Like once I learned this business, I am going to apply this for the rest of my life. Whether I know an older guy who started buying these notes in the 80s. He was buying commercial stuff from the RTC days. I don't know if you remember that whole resolutional trust thing. He was buying that paper and buying those properties at the 15 and 20 cent game. And then he kept tweaking it and tweaking it. From 1983 until 2015, this guy's name was Walter. He was at an event. He was at the Philly event.
Summer, right? This was summertime?
Yeah, Walter out in California. So he just kept tweaking his business. He got into credit card debt. He got into this kind of debt, that kind of debt. Now he's buying seconds. I just sent him an email the other day. I said, listen, Walter, I'm looking into getting into commercial paper. He's like, let's do this, you know. So here's this 80-year-old guy, like, tweaking the business, right? I'm not going back to work. We're gonna keep doing this, and we're gonna keep doing this from wherever we are. So yeah, cell phone and a laptop is pretty much your business. Some of the things I'm gonna go over in a few minutes. Any more questions before I move on? Yes.
Do you have individuals? Not just if somebody has one of those loans that you just talked about. This is
Absolutely.
Shortterm.
Yeah, the question is, do we sell these things individually? Do we see these things individually? And absolutely.
I mean, you would purchase from someone individually. I mean, you know, you take one of their second. They have a second.
Well, yeah,
mortgage.
like I buy, like right now we're buying 45. But then I can take these things once I acquire them, my company acquires them. Then I can send them out and send two to you and two to you. You know, absolutely. Yeah, I have no problem with that. That's how I started. I started, my first note I bought was in York, Pennsylvania. It was a first mortgage on a row house in New York, Pennsylvania, and it was a $40,000 balance. I paid $12,000 for the note, $12,500 I think. Property was worth $25,000. The owner of the property lived out in Wyoming or Montana or something. And I got in touch with him. He said, yeah, there's a tenant in there right now paying $475 a month. I said, you get me 2 full months of rent payments coming into me, and I'll give you $500. He's like, cool. So I actually released him from about $60,000 worth of debt because he wasn't paying the first, and then all those payments started stacking up, and I'm entitled to that money too. So I held that property for 2 years, and then the tenant moved out, and the tenant told the neighbor, hey, I'm moving out. Well, the neighbor was in a lease option with their landlord, and all this lady did was buy row houses in New York, Pennsylvania, fix them up, and put lease option people in. So she called me up and was like, you want to sell your house? And I sold it for 25 grand. So that was my first note. $475 a month for 2 years, and then 25 at the tail. I had to go there once and wasn't happy with that. Not happy at all about that. That was not good. But yeah, that was an individual note that I bought, a one-off, and absolutely, yeah, I think that's the way to start. You know, you buy one, you look through that folder, man. You look for every little nuance of how can I turn this thing into get this borrower to start making payments. Because my objective really is to keep the homeowner in the house. Let them start making payments, something that they can afford, something that makes sense for me. And we're buying at such a steep discount that pretty much any payment is going to work, you know. Yes?
When you buy them like that, does it keep, it's still asset based, right?
Yeah. The question is, do we still buy these where a mortgage is attached to the house? Yeah, we only buy secured mortgages. So what I mean by that is, I don't want to get too paper technical. I hate that part. I leave that for my partner, Kevin. But a mortgage, when a mortgage is drawn up, the mortgage is attached to the house. And there's a note that's signed inside that folder. And that note is attaching the house to the borrower, the debt to the borrower. So when we say we're in the note business, you know, it's collateralized by a mortgage that's collateralized by a house. But if the first mortgage forecloses, it can foreclose and actually wipe out our second position. Now we're holding an unsecured note. The borrower is still responsible for that money because of the note and not the mortgage. But that's an unsecured mortgage, and now that thing is worth a fraction of a penny. It's crap. So that's why our due diligence that we do up front, and then our ongoing process of due diligence once we own these second position mortgages is how we make our money. And we take a lot of the risk out, because there is risk. There's risk of getting wiped out in the first. From the first. So we monitor and maintain that first mortgage, and I don't want to get too technical, but it's not a big deal. But for the amount of discount steep discount that we're getting, it makes it worth our while. So any other quick questions before we move on? Yes, sir.
Mike, if you just starting out, where would be the best note to buy? First mortgage, before one, or you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. The question is, what's the best note for your first note? I know people that do start out buying performing mortgages. I'm not too crazy about it. I've got a saying, you know, you want to get into non-performing note business, just buy some performers, and you'll be in the non-performing note business before you know it. Especially, it depends on who did the workout for you, you know. Especially who you bought it from. You know. They may be stopping paying everything else just to satisfy you because I'm such a great workout specialist that they stop paying their food. Well, that's not going to last for long, you know. So, you know, it really depends. It depends on your capital. It depends on your motivation. It depends on your appetite of what you want to get into. I know guys. I had a student of mine who calls me up. He said, "Listen, I just spent $7 million on non-performing seconds." I'm like, I should be taking your course. So I mean, that's a ton of notes, and but he did all right, and he's doing all right, and he's actually very good at this business. With the thing that I taught him, I really wasn't much to teach him. He had been doing this for a little while. I said, and it was tough because I think he was just going out taking everybody's course. If he got one little tidbit out of it, it would be worth the money. So he asked, I said, so what, Ron, what's your worst problem that maybe I can help you, maybe I can't? He said, well, every month I have to go out of my pocket and pay off my investors, because that's a problem. That's a pain in the neck. You borrow $7 million, that's a big nut to crack every month, especially when you buy non-performing notes and it takes maybe 6 months to a year to get these things paid. So I said, well, what you need to do is start training your investors to become note investors. And now you can take some non-performing notes and pay them off with non-performing notes instead of the things you fold up and put in your pocket. He's like, oh my God, that was worth the course right there. So he changed his business model. Now he's out there. He's got a seminar going on in April out in Los Angeles. And so that's kind of what I do. Stuff like that. Any more questions about the note space itself? Yes?
Have you ever purchased land notes?
I'm sorry?
Land notes, just like,
Notes
it's
for
not.
land.
Oh, on vacant land?
Yeah.
No. I need a borrower to start making payments to me.
Well, I've heard that it can be done that way, that's why.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I've heard that it can be done that way, you can purchase notes on just land.
Absolutely, yeah. Notes can be done on anything. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Yeah. It's just not my specialty. There are people out there that go out and buy notes on very specific properties. I'm working with this guy in Boston now. I'm telling him I'm getting into the commercial space. This guy will buy any commercial note under $50 million with at a 65% purchase price. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hang out with you, man. I'm gonna learn this space. I said, I'll teach you non-performing seconds. You teach me commercial. And so that's what we're doing. I'm moving into that space. Right now, I'm a newbie at it, so I can't talk about it. But he's looking at just a couple $1 million deal down in Florida, in Palm Beach, Florida. So I just want to see how this guy does his craft. So anyway, any more? One more going once? Okay, great. So that's my note business, and I guess no questions means that I either covered it or snoring. So the next thing. Oh, I'm supposed to do this right.
I know I'm not the only one. Sometimes like, this is like extremely valuable information, but you just had a nice lunch. So I mean, if you would, just for a moment, unless you're physically disabled, would you all stand up for a second? All of you who haven't already. All right, and make sure that you're not, look next to, don't hit anybody in the eye, but put your arms up in the air, and then if you can get up on your toes a little bit, just up and down, up and down. That's more exciting than some of y'all had all week. I know, okay, now do like this. Bend your knees a little bit.
You guys do that, I'm gonna sit down.
All right, that's enough now. I don't want you to say, I gotta send you a workout.
Thanks for
that. Set up there. Keep your, I know how it is.
Thanks, Cliff. Get him blood.
Thanks, Long, I appreciate that.
Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to introduce you guys to a tool. Maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not. In the note business, there are several ways to make money. What I put up here is kind of what I'm doing right now with my notes. This is pretty much everything that you can be when you're investing in real estate. Either you're a buyer or you're a seller, or you could be a lender or a borrower, right? You can be a partner an investor, or can you be all of these things during one transaction, one trade? And I've learned to put all these things together where I can buy 50 notes by being all of these and not having to spend a dime. Because, first of all, I'm a buyer. I'm a buyer when I'm talking to my buddy Mark at Keyhole Financial. He sees me like Rasika the buyer. He's a big note buyer, right? Yeah. So I'm a buyer. But then, when I'm off the phone with Mark and I'm talking to my investor friends, I'm a seller. I got 50 notes I want to show you guys. Oh, sweet, okay. So I send them, I bring them onto Google Docs, I show them a spreadsheet. I can actually show you what I'm working on right now. I bring them onto Google Docs, and we sit here and laugh and populate fields all day.